I think that there has been a fairly seismic shift in the world of smartphone technology, and it is pretty dramatically affecting not only the way that we perceive our phones, future phones, but also how different OEMs are approaching future phones. For much of the life cycle of the category smartphone, things have been a marriage of software and hardware. You would get new cool software and you would get new, cool, and significant new hardware. My mind goes back to the unveiling of the original iPhone. Yes, there was a ton of software there that made that form factor work, but that was basically a new form factor that kind of just took over, and that's what every slab phone has been a clone of since then. And since the iPhone, I think it's fair to say that primarily what we have seen has been iteration, but the difference is for a long while, those iterative jumps were actual leaps. Go back to some of those Lumia phones that were putting in these giant 40 something megapixel camera sensors. That was a massive jump over what other phones were doing. Look at the jumps that were made in terms of screen size. I remember when the 4.3-inch screen of the HTC Evo was considered to be such a huge screen, you needed a kickstand on the back because you were going to watch movies on a screen like that. Now, that screen looks absolutely tiny. Resolution, PPI, brightness. I mean, there have been just truly massive leaps in terms of a lot of these iterative aspects. But I think that over the last few years, the pace of these changes, the pace of innovation, and the leaps made in terms of iteration have gotten smaller and smaller. Hardware remaining largely the same year over year. Apple, Google, Samsung, all guilty of doing exactly that, basically releasing the same phone. How much bigger do screens need to get? I mean, we've literally gone as far as folding the screens so that we can fit larger ones in our pockets. As a quick aside, I do think that folding phones represented an interesting sort of side tangent there of more interesting innovation for me. But even folding phones are beginning to slow down. They've kind of all congealed into one form factor, and things are getting less exciting there. That is doubly true when it comes to slab phones. Now, that's not to say that there aren't any smartphone OEMs who are pushing the specs. We've seen the advent of silicon carbon batteries, allowing OEMs to push battery sizes to the stratosphere. 7,000 milliamp hour batteries are actually shipping in phones. Kind of crazy. But here's the problem, and I posted about this on Threads about a week ago. We're running into something called diminishing returns. If you have a phone that makes it from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. and then it's just dead, that's not very good. That's not making it through the day. You get a new phone, and that phone goes from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., and it's got a little bit left over, so you know that you're going to make it all day. That feels like a huge upgrade. That is a big shift in how you have to use your phone because you don't have to plug it in throughout the day. If you now go from that phone to a phone that lasts 2 full days, you would think that that's an even bigger leap, but it isn't, because most people plug their phone in when they go to bed anyways. Some people are going to see that as a huge leap, but for most people, that jump from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. is going to be more significant than the jump from 9 p.m. all the way around 24 more hours to 9 p.m. again. It's a diminished return. Second example, if you have a phone that when you open up YouTube, it takes it 3 seconds to fully load into YouTube, that's very slow. Now you get a new phone and it loads YouTube in 1 second. That feels like a huge leap. Your device is going to feel like just a far improved device. But then what happens if you improve it further from 1 second to a half a second, from half a second to a quarter of a second, from a quarter of a second to a tenth of a second? Those jumps don't feel as significant. They start to get to a point where you're not even really going to notice them. People talk all the time about how Pixel devices with their tensor processors aren't as fast. And I've shown you guys in videos, when you put a Pixel 10, or let's say a Pixel 10 Pro Fold next to a Galaxy Z Fold 7, that Z Fold 7 is going to do most things a little bit faster. And when you have them side by side, you can see it. But when I take my SIM out of my Z Fold 7 and put it in my 10 Pro Fold and then use my 10 Pro Fold for 2 or 3 days, I never notice anything because we're talking about fractions of a second. And unless I'm seeing them side by side, I'm not going to notice those things. And I don't think most people are going to notice those things. So we can keep chiseling away at the same ideas, refining and refining and refining, squeezing out more and more performance, making our phones faster and faster and faster, despite the fact that most people are not doing anything on their phones that actually utilize how powerful they really are. Or we can do what Google, what Samsung, and maybe to a lesser degree what Apple, what they're doing, and that's focus on software features. Now, a lot of you guys probably watched a video where I talked about how it feels like the Pixel brand is sort of beginning to shift a little bit into a direction that maybe isn't tailor-made for me. Features like Magic Cues, features like the Pixel Journal, just things that don't really mean anything to me. There's been a clear shift from Google away from sort of the techier, nerdier people like myself towards lifestyle influencer type people, and that just is what it is. And this is going to sound a little bit crazy because on one hand I'm saying that pixels are moving away from me, but on the other hand I'm defending what they're doing because I think that it is a sound strategy. As I wrote here on this article on ShaneCraig.tech, features are the new specs. Google realized a long time ago that just simply chasing raw horsepower was a losing battle. Instead, what they have to do is they have to actually deliver things to your phone that change the way you use your phone in a fundamental way. And while a lot of those features don't mean much to me, some of them do, right? So here's a photo that I took on a trip to the zoo. On the right, you can see that photo with the chain link fence between myself and this hornbill. And then there's the photo that Google's AI delivered to me with literally the tap of a button. Instead of focusing on benchmark scores that are 10% higher than last year or 10% higher than the competition, Google says, we don't care about benchmark scores. Look at what our phone can do. And I know that many of you, as soon as you start hearing that a feature uses AI, you just check out. You say, I don't want this feature. I don't want to use AI. I don't want anything to do with this. But you have to understand, one, you've been using AI on your phone for a very long time. I think most people, when they hear AI in 2025, what they think of is large language model. But AI is a much broader term, and there are many ways that your phone has been using AI for a long time, like Google's adaptive battery stuff that's been around since 2018, adaptive brightness, Google Play Protect. Like there's all these things that are using AI. When you use speech to text, when you take a photo and it runs it through an ISP and changes the photo, computational photography, remember that term? Like I think that would qualify as well. This is just an evolution. It's another step. Again, we're talking about iteration, but this is the difference here, is that like hardware used to be able to iterate, great big jump, iterate, great big jump, software is still capable of that. So we've had these iterations and then great big jumps. We are experiencing a great big jump. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand why some people have ethical concerns about AI. I totally 1,000,000% understand that. But I just wanted to kind of make that clear. AI in phones isn't new. This latest jump is a big change, and while again you may have your concerns about it, and I fully understand those concerns, and there are many ethical, environmental, there are many potential reasons to be concerned. If you're a smartphone OEM and you have a phone and you're trying to do what you can do to make sure that phone has the biggest leap year over year in things it can do, are you going to focus on increasing the size of the camera sensor that, hey, yeah, if I pixel peep, I can tell that's a little bit better? Or are you going to focus on software features that allow the phone to do things that no phone has ever been able to do? I think there's an obvious answer there. I've spent a lot of time in this video talking about Google, but I also did mention Samsung. They've been doing the same thing. Look at their S series phones. They are barely changing in terms of hardware, and yet it appears as though their sales are actually increasing on the backs of, hey, look at these crazy things our phones can do for the first time ever. Look at these new features. So this does seem to be a winning strategy. Now, guys, I'm looking at this from a very narrow slice. I know I'm going to get comments about ulterior motives of AI and all these there's so many tangential things that are going to branch off from this. And I appreciate those things. We're looking at just sort of this narrow slice of we have a phone, we want to make it better. Should we focus on hardware? Should we focus on software? Should we focus on both? Where should our attention be? That's what I'm talking about in this video. So hopefully that has been communicated relatively clearly, guys. Let me know what you think, though, in the comments down below. Subscribe for more content just like this, and until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.